Picture this, it's the mid-1700s. The 13 American colonies are like the rebellious teenagers of the British Empire. They've grown up, developed their own identity, and they're starting to feel like their parent, Great Britain, is just a little too controlling. This isn't just a squabble, it's the spark that will ignite a revolution. The trouble really began after the French and Indian War, which ended in 1763. Britain won, but wars are expensive. To pay off its massive debt, London looked at the colonies and thought, time to pay your share. This led to a series of acts that rubbed the colonists the wrong way. First came the Sugar Act in 1764, then the Stamp Act in 1765. This wasn't just about paying a few extra cents for paper or sugar. It was the principle of it all. Colonists were being taxed, but they had no representatives in the British Parliament. This gave rise to the famous slogan, "No taxation without representation." The anger was palpable. Secret societies like the Sons of Liberty formed, led by figures like Samuel Adams. They weren't afraid to get their hands dirty, organizing boycotts of British goods and sometimes resorting to more forceful protests. The British government, trying to assert its authority, sent troops to Boston, which only made things worse. Tensions boiled over on March 5, 1770, in what became known as the Boston Massacre. A confrontation between colonists and British soldiers left 5 civilians dead. It was a tragedy that was expertly used as propaganda to fuel the revolutionary fire. Britain tried to calm things down by repealing most of the taxes, except for one on tea. But this was a symbolic move, a way for Britain to say, "We still have the right to tax you." The colonists weren't having it. So, on a chilly December night in 1773, a group of colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded 3 British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. This act of defiance, the Boston Tea Party, was the point of no return. King George III and Parliament were furious. Their response was swift and harsh. They passed a series of laws known as the Coercive Acts, or as the colonists called them, the Intolerable Acts. These laws closed Boston Harbor, restricted town meetings, and forced colonists to house British soldiers. Instead of crushing the rebellion, these acts united the colonies like never before. In 1774, delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies met in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress. They weren't calling for independence just yet, but they agreed to boycott British goods and start training militias. The stage was set for war. The first shots were fired on April 19, 1775. British troops marched from Boston to Concord, Massachusetts, to seize a colonial weapons cache. They were met at Lexington by a small group of Minutemen. Someone fired a shot to this day. No one knows who, and the shot heard round the world officially began the American Revolution. The British continued to Concord, but on their march back to Boston, they were ambushed by thousands of colonial militiamen. It was a bloody retreat for the Redcoats and a huge morale boost for the colonists. The Second Continental Congress convened shortly after, in May 1775. They established the Continental Army and, in a move that would change the course of history, appointed a Virginian planter named George Washington as its commander-in-chief. Washington wasn't the most experienced general, but he had an unshakable resolve and the charisma to hold a ragtag army together through the darkest of times. Even with the fighting underway, many still hoped for reconciliation. But Thomas Paine's fiery pamphlet, Common Sense, published in early 1776, changed everything. He argued, in simple, powerful language, that it was absurd for an entire continent to be ruled by a tiny island. His words spread like wildfire, convincing countless Americans that independence was the only logical path forward. Inspired by this shift in public opinion, the Continental Congress tasked a committee, including Thomas Jefferson, with drafting a formal declaration. On July 4, 1776, they adopted the Declaration of Independence. This document was more than just a breakup letter to King George. It was a revolutionary statement of human rights, declaring that all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The colonies were no longer colonies. They were the United States of America. But declaring independence is one thing, winning it is another. The early years of the war were brutal for Washington's army. They suffered a series of defeats, including being driven out of New York. The winter of 1776 was a low point. The army was freezing, starving, and on the verge of collapse. But Washington, ever the leader, planned a daring move. On Christmas night, he led his men across the icy Delaware River and launched a surprise attack on Hessian mercenaries in Trenton, New Jersey. This victory, followed by another at Princeton, was a desperately needed shot in the arm. The turning point of the war came in 1777 at the Battle of Saratoga in upstate New York. The American forces, led by General Horatio Gates and the brilliant Benedict Arnold, forced an entire British army to surrender. This stunning victory convinced France that the Americans actually had a chance to win. In 1778, France officially recognized the United States and entered the war as its ally, providing crucial money, troops, and, most importantly, a navy. Still, the path was not easy. The winter of 1777 to 78 at Valley Forge was another test of endurance, with thousands of soldiers perishing from disease and starvation. But those who survived emerged as a more disciplined and professional fighting force, thanks to the training of the Prussian officer Baron von Steuben. The war then shifted south. The British captured major cities like Savannah and Charleston, hoping to rally Loyalist support. The fighting in the South was vicious, almost a civil war. But American generals like Nathanael Greene waged a brilliant campaign of attrition, wearing down the British forces under General Cornwallis. Finally, in 1781, it all came to a head at Yorktown, Virginia. Cornwallis had positioned his army on a peninsula, expecting to be resupplied by the British Navy. But the French fleet, in a decisive naval battle, drove the British ships away. Meanwhile, Washington's Continental Army, combined with thousands of French troops, marched south and surrounded Cornwallis on land. Trapped and outnumbered, Cornwallis had no choice but to surrender on October 19, 1781. The fighting was effectively over. The formal end came with the Treaty of Paris in 1783. Great Britain officially recognized the independence of the United States. The experiment had succeeded. A new nation, founded on the ideals of liberty and self-government, was born. The American Revolution wasn't just a war for independence. It was a radical idea put into action, a struggle that would inspire countless others around the world for centuries to come. It's a story of courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of a better future. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, please give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more stories that shaped our world. See you next time.